Hi, my name is Matthew Bellisario. Thanks for joining me today on the BellisarioSonic YouTube channel. Today, a fun video I just want to do discussing whether or not you buy both vinyl records and CDs or other digital forms, DVD, Blu-ray, high-res downloads, and why you prefer one over the other. I think this is an interesting topic. This is always a big controversy among audiophiles, records versus CDs, Blu-ray, 5.1 mixes, what sounds better. I'm going to give you my criterion on how I decide what I'm going to buy. I am not one of those people that has to have vinyl on everything. I'm not one of those people that thinks that a vinyl record always sounds better, because it simply doesn't. And there's a lot of different factors that go into whether or not I decide to buy something on record, or if I buy it on CD, or if it's available on a 5.1 mix, a Blu-ray, something like that. And then also looking at live recordings, whether it's on a Blu-ray live where I can watch it versus just listening to it. So I'm going to give you 6 different criterion that I use to determine whether I buy a digital form or the vinyl form. And the first one is going to be how the actual recording was recorded, whether it was recorded on analog tape originally, the source, and also whether the actual record was sourced from that original analog recording. And so a lot of things nowadays, there's a big mixture. A lot of stuff is sourced from the original analog tapes, and a lot of stuff is not. It's taken from a digital source, 24-bit, maybe DSD or something like that. And that doesn't necessarily mean that one that's sourced from a digital source won't sound good, but it's certainly one of those things that I weigh. So if something, all things being equal, if I have an analog recording and it's sourced from the original analog tapes and then remastered, that's something I'm going to take into consideration. And so when it comes to like the old jazz, like the Blue Note stuff that's coming out, the Verve reissues or other jazz reissues, almost all of those now, or a majority of them on the major releases, are being sourced from the original analog tapes. And so I will almost always prefer, in the jazz genre that came from those analog sources, I'll almost always prefer the records on those. So that's kind of a hands down thing. If it's a Blue Note recording, unless I find ones that aren't available, something like that, I'll always prefer the record. So that's criterion number 1. Criterion number 2 is the quality of the pressing if it's a new recording. So if I buy, for example, this Megadeth, what kind of pressing is this? A lot of new pressings, depending on where they're coming from, sometimes the pressings aren't that good. So that's another factor, and the only way to know that is having experience buying those pressings or getting reviews from other people that have bought those pressings and aren't that impressed with them. Either the sound quality, they're noisy, or the pressings aren't consistently good, things like that. The cost factor is the third criterion. So depending on the recording, is it worth it to buy the vinyl record versus the CD? A CD will cost you brand new around $10 to $15. A record will be easily double that, $20 to $30, maybe $40. So that cost factor does come in to play when I'm looking at something. Maybe it's not one of my favorite albums, but I do like it. I would like to own it. Am I going to spend the $30 on a record when it could be a CD that cost me $10 or $12? And also, I'll take into consideration how it was recorded. So if it's a modern recording, that will also sway my factor as to whether I'm going to get it on CD. It's also, the criteria number 4 would be the type of music that it is. Because in general, when we're looking at, for example, metal music, like this album I just showed you, metal music, heavy bass music, heavy electronic in general, not always, but in general, sounds better on CD. So between these two here, as far as putting it on and listening to it, what's the better sound quality? The CD sounds better than the record, hands down. It's one of my favorite metal records. That's why I bought it on vinyl. And so that comes also down to criterion number 5, the artwork factor, the liner note factor, the larger print, the physical element. That would be number 5. It's cool. Look at this, to hold this in your hand with the artwork and the inner liner notes and, the lyric sheet versus this little CD. But again, all things being equal, sound quality wise, this sounds better than this in this case. So that's another factor. Also, 5.1 mix, Blu-ray, that type of thing also is criterion number 6. So for example, this Peter Gabriel, I'm very happy with the way this sounds on this Blu-ray disc, and I would not buy this on vinyl. So that's just, the way that this music was recorded, I think it's probably going to sound better on the Blu-ray than it will on a vinyl record personally. I don't know that for sure, but it's one of these factors that have come into consideration. I spent $20 on this. I think it was around $20. Comes with 2 CDs and a Blu-ray. And, you got to fold out here with a little booklet. I'm happy with this. It sounds really good. If I'm going to sit down and listen to it on the Blu-ray, I probably would not pull out a record on this. And I'm not going to spend the $40 on the record. So that's another factor. Then we have the live factor, which I do want to talk about because, like, for example, this Transatlantic, I'm not going to buy this on vinyl either. It comes with CDs and a Blu-ray disc here of a concert. So if I'm going to sit down and listen to this at home and I've got the actual concert footage that I'm watching, I would rather have that than have the record. And I would almost every single time, if I wanted to listen to this, I would pull this out and watch it versus pulling out a record that cost me $60 to have this, on it. So that's another factor. Also, the used factor when it comes to the cost. So for example, I went to a used record store the other day and I bought all these. They were $4. This live Taj Mahal. Not even sure this is even available on record. This live, recording there. Also, this Blue Note Stanley Turrentine in the 3 Sounds 2 CD set for $4. Well, I don't think this is even on record, or if it is, it's probably going to be very expensive. But, 2 CDs for $4. So things like this, I'll pick up all day long. I saw this Buckethead CD, pretty cool, $4. Grab that. So things like that, I'll always be open to getting CDs, just depending on what it is. But when it comes to like classic rock records, things like that, I have a lot of those on original pressings. When it comes to those, I prefer to always have those on record because they come from analog sources again. So that's kind of my criterion on how I judge them. I guess it was really 7 criterion: how it was recorded and sourced, whether it's analog or digital, the quality of the pressing, the cost factor, is it worth having on that record versus having it on CD, the type of music it is, again, if it's bass heavy electronic, metal, stuff like that, it usually sounds better on digital source, CD or Blu-ray or high-res digital. That's my experience. And I've got quite a few of them. I got like a lot of Iron Maidens on record and on CD, Megadeth, things like that. It always seems to me that the CDs sound better. But I like having the artwork, and a lot of those are my favorite albums, so I do like having that physical element. So that's another thing that comes into consideration: the artwork, the liner notes, the larger print, the physical element. Then you've got whether it's a 5.1 mix, again, like that Peter Gabriel, some of these other 5.1 mixes that have been done by Steven Wilson, that kind of thing comes into consideration. And I'll get the 5.1 a lot of times and won't buy the record. But sometimes if it's one of my favorites, like the Marillion, I'll buy both of them. So a lot of different factors here. And then finally, the live recording, whether or not it's available on a Blu-ray or a DVD, where I'm probably going to put that on more than I will pull out a record and listen to it. If I can visually watch the concert and have it in surround sound and things like that, that would be the 7th criterion. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. So please leave your comments. CD, digital versus vinyl records. How do you determine Or do you just buy one or the other? Love to hear from you. Thanks for joining me, and we'll talk to you later on. Take care.